Wig Half Lumber. When I signed on, I didn't know I would be required to wear a costume, Mansfield complained as he and his friend Hartman trudged up the gangplank towards the small fishing village. It was clearly spelled out in the contract, Hartman replied with a sigh. He was getting tired of Mansfield's expressions of dissatisfaction. Uniform, Mansfield snapped, stopping in his tracks and turning on one heel. Uniform? That's what it said. Not costume. Keep moving, Hartman ordered, bumping into his friend and pushing him forward. He wanted a drink, and the only place to get it was at the Scrimshaw Shaw, a tiny bar in the tiny town of Accomack. Mansfield continued to grumble, feeling like a fool at having to appear in public and dressed in what he referred to as the little sailor costume. What really bothered him the most, however, was the wig. It was made of real hair from some cash-strapped woman in a foreign country. Dyed blonde, it made him look like one of the Nelson twins, if you know who they were. Pabst, Hartman gave his order to the barman, Big Zeke. Same, Mansfield muttered, keeping his eyes down. The bar was small, about the size of Missy Lester's living room, and about as cozy. Most of the population of Accomack were seated around the place. They nodded and waved at the two lumberjacks who lived on the big barge anchored outside in the bay. Hartman turned around on his stool and waved back. Mansfield huddled over his beer. Take all this with good humor, Hartman advised. Soon we'll finish up our time here, and we can head home, driving our brand-new Range Rover. That was another thing. Mansfield said nothing, but he felt that he had been cajoled into this whole project against his will. He had no interest in buying a Range Rover. He just wanted to get back home to his girlfriend and the band that they hoped to start together. Hey, said old Cleet from one of the locals. Did you hear? Did you boys hear who won the Grammy? No, who? Mansfield unwillingly asked. Lady Gaga. Billy Luggage. A man in a gorilla suit was enjoying an old episode of Charlie's Angels when his mother summoned him on the house intercom. Tom, she called, will you go down to Wendy's and get me a cheeseburger and a small Frosty? The man in the gorilla suit frowned. He hated going on little errands for his mother, but as she was letting him live in the converted attic space for free, he felt obligated to do so. But don't try asking him to mow the yard. Then it was nothing but curses and imprecations. Fingers pointed at his sister's lack of involvement, though she lived 2 hours away. Tom the Gorilla Man reluctantly removed his costume for the trip to Wendy's, but at the last minute balked at going out completely unadorned. He decided to keep the gorilla mask. Sure, it was against the law under the current anti-terrorist regime, but he felt defiant, cocksure, youthful. He drove down to Wendy's and went inside. Why didn't he go through the drive-thru? Asked Wilhelmina, a puppet donkey princess on the children's TV show Murky Mulch. Tom didn't use the drive-thru window because he hated the sloth that it represented. One might find it odd that a jobless dreamer like Tom would decry such a modern convenience, but it was a fact that he was quite a philosopher and principled in his way. Note the gorilla mask. Certainly the people in Wendy's noted it. Tom was standing in line with his friend Norbert, whom he had met there quite randomly. They were standing there humorously complaining about the wait, Norbert observing that the staff had their thumb up their butt. This made a young boy in line behind them giggle appreciatively at their wit and maturity. Also, the girls behind the counter giggled at the gorilla man as he placed his order. The federal police, however, did not giggle as they surrounded Tom in the parking lot and shot him dead. Never give a gorilla the chance to make the first move, advised Commander Pork, reaching down and removing the mask. The young boy, me, age 12 or so, was confused to see that Tom was about 40 years old. Mother through. Apprentice Farmer and his steed came across a clutch of duck eggs in the old spacecraft out in Field 8B. Before their wondering eyes, the eggs hatched, and all the ducklings sprang forth, imprinting on Apprentice Farmer and following him everywhere. Why not me as well? Wondered Apprentice Farmer's steed. Is there something about my reptilian appearance that repels them? He punched the popcorn button on the microwave oven with savagery. Reptilian repulsion, mused Apprentice Farmer. That's not a bad idea for a movie title. Thus inspired, Apprentice Farmer began to work on the project, aided by his duckling adoptees. Duckling adoptees, thought Apprentice Farmer's steed. That's not a bad title for a TV series. He then began, in secret, behind Apprentice Farmer's back, to work on the project. The inevitable confrontation occurred when both Apprentice Farmer and his steed approached Cole Rabble about starring in their respective projects. I wanted him to play a fingerless doctor who discovers radioactive pellets in a moose cavern, Apprentice Farmer yammered. Well, I wanted him for the role of a human-shaped peanut dispensary inside which a society of flightless bats lives. The steed, who was himself flightless and fingerless, brayed in return. The ducklings, by this time grown into a singing group known as the Duckson Six, had problems of their own. The youngest of the number, Amos Duckson, had become a star in his own right. He had written a best-selling collection of show business aphorisms accompanied by his own droll illustrations of nude burn victims. I'm tired of carrying the rest of you, Amos complained. We'll see what Daddy has to say, Lewis snarled back at him. High in the eyrie of Castle Brown, they all met for a clearing of the air. Someone opened the window. We just want to know one thing, Amos addressed himself to Apprentice Farmer. Where are your feathers and beak? Choice fasten. How does one keep one's pants fastened, given that the pants have a fly to be fastened? I know there are plenty of you out there that wear drawstring sweatpants in public, but you are lazy people with no sense of decorum or style, and I don't have to take you and your actions into account here. Now, the options available are the zipper and buttons. The Velcro fly, celebrated in song and video, is semi-mythical and need not be taken into consideration, much like the political opinions of someone wearing sweatpants in public. In the old days, there was a third option, string or cord. This was in the old days when a pair of pants truly was a pair of objects, one pantaloon for the left leg and one for the right. They would be brought together by a lacing of string. This fashion was briefly revived by heavy metal performers of the late 80s, but its drawbacks, like those of the feudal era in which the fashion was prevalent, were soon apparent. I used to wear button flies back when they were available. You just can't find them anymore. I would wear them again if I could find some. I'd wear my Sergio Valente jeans if I could fit into them. I'd do a lot of things if the circumstances were only favorable. Circumstances govern our range of actions, and it's time we started accepting that fact. It's a central tenet of my art. Look at this book. Its construction was determined by what I was able to do given my particular situation. That's why it's not Quiet Days in Clichy or The Magic Mountain. Pants are a strange article of clothing anyway. I wonder what insectoid extraterrestrials would make of them. You encapsulate your excretory orifices in easily stainable fabric? They might ask. You stay just right there, we would tell them, holding our weapons ready. How do you know our language? We are using a translation device that you aren't even aware of being in effect. How are you breathing our air? Nice day today, isn't it? Answer the question. You'll notice we all go nude. Stagnant autumnal, and the leaves did fall, crashing to earth and killing hundreds. It would have been thousands if we hadn't completed the Landsash Memorial subterranean shelter in time, one commentator observed. They were snickering at the name, for not only did everyone still call it the bunker, but the man they had chosen to name it after, me, was now thought of as a figure of fun. What a joke he was to the younger generation. All that self-pity. But anyway, as the populace rode out the cold weather months underground, it became apparent that the bunker wasn't built very well. The ventilation system didn't work properly, and mildew began to form. This was a fungus that glowed in the dark. Children ate it, although they had been warned not to. How many times must you be warned not to eat the mildew? Was it really phosphorescent, or was it fluorescent? No one could say for sure. But the children continued to eat it, and the hipsters continued to celebrate it in poetry and art, holding gatherings in the hallways lit by its glow. Eventually, when everyone emerged from the bunker at the beginning of spring, a definite dichotomy had sprung up between the old and young. The old were committed to three-piece suits and hats with puppets hidden inside, while the young were transfixed by skateboards, left-wing politics, and noise rock. They even viewed the tender new blossoms differently. The old saw them as reliable measurement of future economic activity. The young saw them as tiny faces to pluck and eat, each face yawning obliviously. Obviously, the young had psychedelic issues. They name their skateboards and take them to bed with them, complained one old man on the political and social analysis program. I wish I'd been exposed to psychedelics as a child, an old woman rued. My uncle had a drinking buddy that looked like Dan Rowan, only he had a white man's afro, a member of the youth recalled. How do you remember Dan Rowan? That was clearly before your time. That's where you're wrong, man. Every time is my time now. After you've been entombed during your formative years, the rest of your life is like The Walking Dead.